All right, so welcome everyone. Good afternoon to the first of a series of meetings with our local industry pioneers. Today we'll start off our first series with Mr. Rupert Mends. He has made a mark in the industry in Trinidad and Tobago. He has also been in the industry for over 5 decades, which is a very long time. So before I pass you on over to the hosts of our meeting today, that's Mr. Joseph and Mrs. Pardasie, who are the presidents of the 2 student chapters from UWI and UTT respectively. I just wanted to give you some basic ground rules. If you don't have a profile, you can create one using your name. If you have a picture, use your picture. If there are any disruptions, that's fine. That happens. If your mic isn't working, that's okay. You can use the chat if you want to post any questions to Mr. Mends. We'll entertain a few of those coming to the end. But while the interview part of it is going on, we prefer that you mute your mic. And you can use your video if you wish, or you don't have to use it. It's optional. And we are recording this session because we want to keep it as a historical thing for us, both for the chapters to use and also if we want to use it for any educational forum. So thank you for understanding. And now I'll pass you over to the 2 hosts, Mr. Joseph and Mrs. Pardasie.
Good evening, everyone. So, Mr. Mends, welcome this evening to our session. And to kick things off, my first question for you is, tell us a little about yourself and how long have you worked in the industry?
Okay, first of all, I grew up in, first 12 years of my life I spent in 𝐈𝐧𝐭𝐞𝐫𝐳. And in 𝐈𝐧𝐭𝐞𝐫𝐳, I was very aware of the oil industry personnel. I saw them driving around in fancy cars and knew they had fancy clubs and they did tennis, and they seemed to be living quite a good life. Yeah? So not only that, I went to 𝐈𝐧𝐭𝐫𝐳 Intermediate, and if you look, one could see, looking through the windows of the school, you could see some pumping jacks. So the school was actually located on the border of an oil field. Naturally, I got interested in the oil industry. Then before becoming a professional, I joined the mines department, as it was called, in 1960. And here, they were preparing for the change of the country from being a colony to becoming independent. And one of the first jobs in the mine department was to rearrange the files in the mines department. And there I became acquainted with a lot of the statistics and what is happening in the industry. And it seemed very interesting. I got a scholarship to do petroleum and natural gas engineering. And in 1964, I went to Penn State University. And on my return to Trinidad in 1968, I was then exposed to what was taking place in the industry. And I must say, working in the industry was quite an experience. You know, one felt, certainly I felt like if I was on the sun and all the other companies were orbiting the ministry. And this feeling was further emphasized, and later on I joined Amoco, or not, well, BP Amoco. And at that time, I began, in BP, I felt like I was on one of the planets circulating the Ministry of Energy. But my early days in the Ministry of Energy were quite interesting. I joined at a time when a lot was happening in the industry. And in fact, 1968 was a kind of signal year for the industry. BP, or Amoco at the time, had started drilling. And I remember the excitement of, well, they drilled about 8 wells up to 1968, and they were all dry. And I remember when the well log for the OPR2 well came in, there was a lot of excitement in the ministry. I saw people rushing up and down. And I got a glimpse of the log, and it was the logs was something, we saw some depths of some oil sands, more than 100 feet and so on, things we had never seen before with any other. And this really spiked a lot of excitement in the ministry. So in 68, you had the OPR, as I said, the first discovery. And in the ministry, I had to do some well testing. We had to go to that was one of the main jobs in the ministry, well testing. So you're on that first well, Frank looking, and I went to that test. In the ministry, we also dealt, of course, with the other wells on land and offshore in the Gulf of Paria. And here we had to do, in the ministry, we were responsible for approving the drilling of wells, workovers, even the statistics of the industry, and generally seeing that the industry was properly run. One of the key things we had to do on land, for example, was to ensure that you didn't drill wells close to each other, to one another. And that in itself was very exciting. I'm going on too long, you can stop me and ask me something else. I'm probably going on too long on this here.
No, by all means. I mean, you free to chat, right? We will work this out. But yeah.
Okay.
So cool. So I think you kind of basically covered, what our next question was. So the second question was really, what inspired or caused you to really join the petroleum industry, and what were some of the major circumstances and events that would have led to you pursuing that career path? And I think you covered some of that, but by all means, if you wish to add, you could.
Yeah, I certainly wish to add. One of the things I found about the oil industry was that you had the science, but there was also, to me, a bit of mystery. For example, to me, there's a lot of detective work, for example, in determining where to build a well. It was the geologists. I was really impressed by the work that the geologists had to do, And there was the excitement of, a new well was being drilled. And as good as the geologists were, they couldn't always tell you whether the well would be successful or not. And we had to sometimes witness the spudding of wells, or during the drilling of the wells, we had to go and ensure, together with petroleum inspectors, ensure that safety measures were followed. But the industry was, I find, quite exciting. And later on in my career in the industry, I think it led to my visiting a lot of countries. For example, I've been to every country in South America except French Guiana and Suriname. I've been to all the continents except Antarctica and Antarctica. And we met, you met people, pretty high people in these countries. We went there on training courses. The ministry had a very strong focus on training its people. And this is one of the things that attracted me. Now, going back a little bit, one of the reasons that, you know, when I came back from Penn State, one of the reasons I came back was a deep appreciation I had for having received a scholarship. Because I knew without it, there was no way I was going to be able to study at the university. And at the time, the ministry gave scholarships, and many people, some engineers qualified and they didn't return to Trinidad. Because Trinidad seemed too small to them. Some came back and they didn't work very long, they left. But I felt a strong commitment to the government and people for having sponsored my education. I just wanted to add that because I think I had a very strong affiliation to Trinidad and Tobago. As a matter of fact, I still.
All right, nice. So following that question on your inspiration basically to what that led you to join the petroleum industry, did you have any expectations about the industry, and how did that differ from when you actually began working to now?
Okay, well, my expectations, I think generally they were met. I knew the ministry was not a hands-on place, you know, we're not doing and actually drilling wells. We were more or less legislators. We set policy. We negotiated with all companies, and I expected that. I really was not disappointed. I'd had some hands-on experience in at university. I worked with, for one summer, I worked at Texas in Salem, Illinois, and at the university, this may be strange here, but at the Ministry of Petroleum and Mines, I got a lot of attachments to companies in Venezuela. On a yearly basis, I would be doing work with the Venezuelan Ministry of Mines and Carbons. Initially, I worked with Corpoven, and they later turned to the PDVSA. And some of the work there involved reservoir engineering, where we had to, we were looking at the delineation of oil fields and the reserves. You know, especially there were some fields in the Gulf of Paria at the time that we looked at, and there was always some discussion as to whether the fields crossed the border and that sort of thing. This was very interesting work, you know, that. Because being in Venezuela, that often I sort of improved my Spanish. So that was of benefit. So I think I got a lot out of the ministry. I should say that one of the experiences that I enjoyed really was negotiations with oil company personnel. I believe we were able to hold our own. We frequently gave out acreages for exploration and production, and there we negotiated these exploration and production licenses. Later on, the ministry went to production sharing contracts. And the one advantage of the production sharing contracts was that we were able to see more of the data of what has taken place within the oil companies as a partner to the oil companies. The oil companies, you requested data, and for the most part, you got the data you requested, not much more. And I think we really welcome that change to the production sharing contracts. Now, in the ministry, I was able to witness several things. First, I joined at a time when, in 1968, when that was the second highest peak of production in Trinidad and Tobago. And we had Trinma was the main contributor to that. And in 1968 also, the government started looking at the North Coast Marine area. Most operations were taking place in Soldado, a bit on the East Coast. There was a company called Dominion Oil that had drilled a couple of wells off the East Coast. They considered the wells were producers. Well, the wells had hydrocarbons, but they didn't consider them commercial. Interestingly, though, later on, Tesoro worked on those same wells and they were commercial at the time. I guess it had something to do with oil pricing. In 1968, also, the North Coast Marine area was looked at. The United Nations and the government cooperated in carrying out what was called a magnetic survey. They just flew aircraft over the area, and the geologists would explain this better, a magnetometer or something like that. They were able to see formations, inclines and anticlines and so on. It's interesting that out of 68 and 71, I was, they started, Deminex, the company started drilling. And their first well was a success. I remember there being on the well, because I had to witness the test. And I remember the time, it was about 6 o'clock in the evening. And some of the workers on the well were becoming very agitated because they knew the well was tested gas, and they were concerned about the safety of the rig. I must say it was a sort of rickety rig. It wasn't the newest rig around. So they came to me, and I was appealing to me to stop the operations. And here I was thinking, okay, I'm a junior engineer at this time. How do I stop this big company from operating? Anyway, I persuaded the drillers to, the manager of the operation to shut down the well. And that, at least I felt a little sense of power there. But at least it showed, you know, that the ministry was well up to date in the safety protocols and so on. I remember another incident in the ministry where in the 70s, the BP was flaring a lot of gas around 1977. And 77, later on. It was flaring a lot of gas, and this is in the 80s, well, in the 80s, yeah. And I remember Trevor Boxing, and the permanent secretary decided that this had to stop, you know. And here was another instance where within the ministry we had to come up with some good arguments. Although we had the power to stop operations, it couldn't be used, you know, on a whim. We had to have a very good case. But we made a case, and they actually, Amoco actually shut in somewhere else. And I think that the occurrence of this excess gas is what, this gas flaring is what led to the formation of the project, the National Gas Compression Project. This project I was a co-project manager, or maybe I should say assistant project manager. And that was an exciting time for me. I was actually sent an attachment to the National Gas Company, and where they were planning for the setting on the gas compression platforms took place. I remember people in the I did a bit of reservoir engineering. I remember some people in the ministry asking me whether there'd be enough gas after platforms were set down, whether there'd be enough gas to feed it. And I did a bit of 𝐸𝐭 curve analysis and so on. And yes, I said, the platform should be in operation. So certainly you would have time to recoup the investment. That's an interesting story. It turned out that the platform outlived the investment time schedule. Not only that, but it turned around that instead of 𝐸𝐭 supplying gas to NGC, NGC started supplying gas to 𝐸𝐭 from those 8 platforms for gas compression. Now the story behind that was that although 𝐸𝐭 was not interested in compression, the gas the laws are such that any gas produced, any gas flared, was available to the government free of charge. So that the government had no, NGC had no cost as gas was concerned. Now the NGC in setting on that platform, the NGC had no, they had no contacts with the oil industry. And this is where, as a member of the ministry, I was seconded because I was able to make a lot of contacts within the industry and, you know, to help source services for the companies.
Yeah, that sounds. I mean, that's really good stuff. I mean, one thing I like that you said was that you know, where you made the decision to persuade the drilling manager to stop operations on the rig, and yeah, I mean, I would feel powerful too, right? That's a big call. So that was cool for me. Maybe for at least for this last question on this segment, you know, what are some of your most memorable accomplishments that you've had in your illustrious career in the petroleum industry?
Okay, well, I saw this maybe memorable to me. My question was so memorable, but my attachment to the National Gas Company on the gas compression project was one of the major experiences. I was involved in negotiations. For example, in setting out the negotiations for the first LNG plant, which was in 1999. I remember that about 2 years before that project was actually started, someone from ConocoPhillips company came to my office. They had no contact with anyone. They wanted us sound out the government on whether it would accept a gas LNG, you know, as a feasible use of gas. There was some time before, I think about 3 years before, where there was a buzz about LNG, but that died. So I was able to direct them to the right people to speak to. And as I say, the rest is history. We decided to have the LNG. So I would not say I was responsible for it, but I certainly was the first contact in that discussion.
Okay, nice. So, from hearing your experience and your history thus far, I think it's safe for us to jump into the next segment, which is advice on the future of the energy industry. And that will lead me to my first question being, what skills do you think are necessary in order to be successful in the industry?
Well, okay, there are soft skills and hard skills. And I think the soft skills are probably the skills that are necessary for any industry, any job that you take on. They always speak about communication. You have to be able to communicate internally with the people you work, and of course, you may have a job where you have to communicate externally. And another major thing I would say is flexibility. One has to look at what a company needs. I think that being flexible is very important, especially in the oil industry. You have changes taking place, and you cannot sit back and say, well, you're well trained, petroleum engineer, and that's it. You have to be open for training. You have to be able to work with other people. In the oil company, you have, in the last 20 years or so, you have this situation where there are more skill groups, mixed groups with mixed skills coming together to work on a project. So if you can't work with other people, then you certainly would be a drawback. And an important thing, I think, when you're working with a company, I think an important thing is you have a certain amount of loyalty to the company. Now, everyone has its personal ambitions and so on. While you're with the company, you have to give that company your best. And I think anyone would correlate that. People would say, well, when the company is going through a rough period, they tend to get rid of people first and other equipment. But the point is the company cannot operate without people. Now, you have the hard skills, visual engineering skills. But I think one of the things we have to look at now in the modern oil industry is the IT skills. Very important that you're able to work with them. Reservoir modeling. You have to look at safety. Be able to work with them. They have to be skilled in the safety of operations. And then there is this major challenge of alternative or green energy. And, one of the things that Lisa asked me was that how long would the industry last? And this is a question. It's a perennial question. In that, I remember every time I went out to speak to people about a career in the oil industry, one of the first questions they would ask is, will there be an oil industry when I graduate? And I think the concern there was whether the reserves in Trinidad, whether the reserves would run out. Now I get the same concern, but I get, in addition to that question in Trinidad, I think people are wondering whether the markets would run out, whether they're devoid of markets. And no one could tell. No one can really tell with any certainty how long the oil industry is going to last. You know, Exxon, for example, feels that after the pandemic, the oil industry come roaring back to its pre-pandemic days. The International Energy Agency feels that, well, the industry may stay, production may stay level, or there may be a decline. BP thinks that there would be a decline, and they are moving towards green energy sources. So that I wouldn't fool myself, or certainly try to fool anybody by thinking that we know what's going to happen. A lot depends on what oil prices are doing. One thing we know for sure is that natural gas will be around for a while. Even going to solar and wind and so on, the taps will not be turned off suddenly. So certainly within the next maybe 30, 40, even 40 years, we have natural, or more, if you have natural gas playing a major role. The shape of the industry may be different. You may need fewer people operating, with IT and all these things. But there'll always be the need for engineering. One of the things I think about, I have always advised people in petroleum engineering, is that you're in a field where there are a lot of skills. You gain a lot of skills. You learn some mechanical engineering, chemical engineering. One should not be so focused on what your diploma says. Your diploma may say petroleum engineering, but you have skills that can be into others. I remember when in my graduating class, I graduated, there were about 10 of us graduated as petroleum engineering in that session. And believe it or not, certainly about 6 of those petroleum engineers went into banking. They never worked in a company. They did forecasts and that sort of thing for banks. So financing is one of the areas. I think it's important that young engineers have a good idea of some of the management accounting, enough to be able to work your way around and just see that. So I think there's one important sort of skill that I didn't mention, as time management. Companies want projects completed on time. Cost management.
Great. I think that's some great advice on the whole, and some things to keep in the back of your head, in terms of working in the industry. And one thing I've been hearing personally for probably within the last couple of months is to never really try to pigeonhole yourself in one area and try to be a jack of all trades. To really, expand yourself and try to get the whole grasp of everything that you're doing and really understand what that is. And since you kind of gave some advice already from the last question, this question is really, what advice would you give to young professionals like myself and Evangeline and other young professionals who are on the call, that want to make a career in this energy sector, and by extension, the petroleum industry?
Well, I think you said a key word there that you should focus on. Consider yourself to be in the energy business. The energy business means that you will not be confined to petroleum and natural gas engineering. I remember at one time people were saying, well, if you're in petroleum engineering, you could go into water, for example. Do you know that there's a lot of, well-run industry, there's a lot of reservoir engineering taking place in water. In fact, the books that I used at the time when I did reservoir modeling. The textbook that I use was designed for water, not oil. You know, so be flexible. You have to keep your eyes open. And I think, you know, finance is a good area to look at, even as an engineer, especially as an engineer. I would think one of the areas that I appreciated most when I did my master's degree was not the extra petroleum engineering I did, but the extra courses dealing with finance and management. So the key word I would say is flexibility. You keep your eyes open, see what's taking place in the industry. If you have to switch to be a solar engineer, why not? Why not switch? You know, it's keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes on the energy, because the world cannot exist without energy. Another thing is there would be opportunities outside of Trinidad and Tobago. The petroleum industry is one area where I've seen so many people leave Trinidad and get good jobs and hold high positions outside of the country. I don't think there's any other industry in the country that has contributed so much to the development or the operations in other countries as the petroleum industry. So be flexible, keep your eyes open, and get as much skill as you could. Of course, as I said before, IT is a key skill that one has.
Yeah, I definitely, what resonates with me is the flexibility part and how you brought up, you know, the finance aspect, because I'm currently pursuing petroleum and I work in finance for a service company. And I was feeling like I'm going to be stuck in finance forever. So it really gave me hope that it's good to be flexible. It's, you know, good to always look beyond the Trinidad and not just settle for what's in Trinidad currently. So I really appreciated that. And I think it's safe to say that we could jump into something fun. So let's kick off a small game that we have. And I'll start off with, what is your favorite genre of music?
Jazz. I like jazz. Jazz. I like also like classical music, pop music. I look at music, for example, as I look at food. You know, I wouldn't say I like Chinese food, therefore I wouldn't eat American food or something. I like it more. It depends on the mood and then, you know, what I'm facing at the time. Right? I love music generally.
I think you look like a trumpet player. You can play the trumpet.
No, but I do play the guitar.
Oh, nice. Nice.
That's good. That's really good. Do you prefer onshore?
My wife would say I play with the guitar.
Don't worry, I just play with the drums too. So, sorry, Evangeline.
It's okay. I'm not musically inclined, so you'll have fun with that. Yeah, so onshore, offshore exploration.
Offshore, definitely. I think on Trinidad is a small land area. We've explored the southern basin, attempts were made to explore the northern basin also without much success. But on offshore, we have, you know, quite a bit of acreage. One of the things I have encouraged people to look at, looking at Trinidad, we tend to think of Trinidad as just this little island, you know, we look at Tobago, we tend to think of the land area. But if you look at the economic zones that we are entitled to, that we have around in the waters around Trinidad, Trinidad and Tobago is larger than some small states in the United States. If you take that acreage, think of it as all belonging to Trinidad and Tobago. We're not just confined to land. We have a lot of, there are a lot of, who knows, they've been taking out manganese nodules available offshore. And there are other areas that we have to look at, but we have a lot of acreage. So economically, we are not a tiny country as far as potential is concerned.
If you could live anywhere, where would it be?
I think I'm living where I would like to live. You mean anywhere other than in Trinidad?
Yeah, other than in Trinidad.
At this time of the year, with upheavals all around the world, I don't think there are many places that other than Trinidad. Maybe some other Caribbean island, but I find there's so much turmoil and so on. And at my age, you know, let me just settle down and live the rest of my life.
What was your favorite book?
Oh gosh, too numerous. It's difficult for me to pinpoint a favorite book. I must say though, most of my reading has been in non-fiction. I do a lot of non-fictional reading. Of course, in growing up, you read the usual books like 𝐸𝐾𝐻 and all that sort of thing. I like biographies. I read a lot. I read a lot of biographies. But I can't point a favorite book. You know, they're asking me who is my favorite child.
Agreed. Okay, and last one from me is, what is your favorite game or sport?
This may sound a bit strange. I love American football. And because there's a lot of action and there's a lot of scoring, as opposed to our football, where there'll be a lot of action but not much scoring. And I think this love for American football came from my undergraduate experience in Penn State, which is an American football house. But you know, I admire the game is so tactical. It looks almost like, you know what's going on. It looks almost like chess. The moves that are there. So it's very tactical. A lot of action and a lot of scoring. That's my second favorite, of course, would be cricket.
I love cricket too. Anya?
Yeah. So based on this, you know, what is your pet peeve? What gets you going? What are you a sucker for? What is your pet peeve?
Well, I find as I get older, I seem to be becoming allergic to people who don't think for themselves, who just accept what's given and don't question, and people who don't realize that they have a responsibility to others. It's not a selfishness will only get you that far. So I think that is my pet peeve. I really can't stand people who don't think.
Good to know. So this is another question. I mean, you might pull out something, and I'm sure your answer may be something I completely don't know about, right? But is there anything you wish that would come back into fashion? Any type of clothing or hairstyle, or I don't know, anything. Back to your younger days.
Well, one thing that I used to feel should come back into fashion. Remember in the early days when you had people working with you and you asked them to do something. You asked them to jump, they'd ask you how high. But they don't do that now. They do more thinking, you know. And they'll ask you why, which should be admirable. As far as fashions are concerned, Not really. I used to go along with the flow. You know, they say there's a saying, you know, in matters of principle, stand like a rock, but in matters of fashion, go with the tide. So you
Right.
go with the tide, you know.
You just go with it. Okay.
But one thing you're sure, fashion will come back. They will repeat. The body has a certain shape and then there's only that much you can do with the clothes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So this is the last kind of question, but this is really just for you to choose one, right? So the first thing that comes to your mind, you just blurt it out, right? So fast food or home cooked meals?
Sorry, I missed that.
Fast food or home cooked meals?
Or home cooked meals, of course.
All right.
Michael's a good cook.
And well, it kind of changing gears, but KFC or doubles? If you had to,
I would say good doubles.
good doubles. I agree.
Good doubles.
I agree. I think I know the answer to this one, but South Trinidad or North Trinidad?
My neighbor string is buried in South Trinidad. From the age of 12, I lived in North Trinidad. I love both North and South.
Okay.
I have no choice.
Cool. We will settle for that. A beach lime or river lime?
Beach.
Beach.
Lime,
we're talking about virtual or a face-to-face workspace?
Beach or face-to-face or?
Virtual or face-to-face workspace?
Face-to-face.
Face-to-face, yeah.
Yeah.
I think most of us.
But I'm old-fashioned, and that's what I'm more comfortable with, you know. And I like the ease of interaction with people. And I have found, for example, I've had some problems, some issue I'm dealing with, and you meet during lunchtime and you speak, and somebody else from our department, may not be in your department, is speaking about something, and you say, wait a minute, you know, what he's saying there could be applied to what I'm working on. I think you missed that in the virtual space. So maybe the solution is to have a mix of both.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we're all looking forward to going back to that face-to-face at some point with no restrictions whatsoever. So
you mustn't discount the social benefits you get from working with people. Man is a social animal.
Yes, correct. So, conventional drilling or unconventional drilling?
Well, I'm more familiar with conventional drilling.
So conventional, okay. And which one?
Yeah. But I'm sure, you know, unconventional is more efficient and all of that. And since you're looking at cost, I think, although I prefer conventional because I'm familiar with it, I think the right answer should be you know, the more modern unconventional.
And last one, operator or service company? Which one would you prefer? I
have operator.
Operator, okay.
Yeah, I think service company confined, you know, in one area, you know, that the operator you see more.
Yeah, I get you. I think working in an operator company is nice, but it doesn't always work out that way. So, you know, you use the best of the opportunity that you have. So,
of course not. There would be great service companies, and once you enjoy what you're doing, you know, contributing.
I agree. So, Evangeline?
Yes, so I think now we can open the floor and take a few questions from the audience. Anyone has any questions, feel free to send in the chats or just unmute and ask.
My friend Shastri Maharaj had a question. I think I saw something flash on the screen.
Shastri, you can feel free to unmute your mic and ask.
Well, the question I asked was, the first 𝐈𝐧𝐭𝐞𝐫 discovery well, was it SEG-1 in February of 1968? However, it was a gas well. I don't know if Rupert would care to comment on that.
I believe that it was a gas well. And I know Shashi, you're much better at remembering these well names than I ever was. But I mean, it was a gas well. You remember that 𝐼𝐧𝐭𝐞𝐫𝐭 proved up a lot of gas off the East Coast in the drilling program. And I think it was that gas well. The OPR1 well, I think that was just off the East Coast of Oak Point Radix. And that had some discoveries. But if my memory serves me right, I think you're correct.
Yeah, actually, I'm looking at a report which I compiled when I was the exploration engineer for 𝐼𝐧𝐭𝐞 starting in 1974. And SEG 1 was the first discovery well, which was completed in February 28, 1968. OPR2 was completed in 1969. Although some oil, it tested as condensate. So the first oil discovery was really recorded as OPR3. The subsequent well, which when tested, the API gravity, you had gravities of 35 degrees API instead of 45. So,
and that was something new to the industry, that light oil that was being discovered on the East Coast. Lighter than, as you know, it was so light that the Point of Perry refinery couldn't handle it.
Right.
And it had to be shipped away to a special refinery that 𝐼𝐭𝐞 had in the US.
Yeah, why I mentioned this, the subsequent oil field development were based on OPR3 and OPR4. And where they set the TEAK A, B, and C platforms, and they set TEAK D for gas sort of close to OPR2 because of it having more gas than oil.
Shashi, as I said, you're much more familiar with those developments than I would ever be. They're so close to it.
All right, well, thank you very much for that. We have room for one more question. Does anybody else have a question to ask Mr. Mends before we close?
Well, I would have a lot to ask Rupert, but if the one thing, Rupert, who would you consider to be the pioneers in the oil industry prior to 1970, and who would you say stand out after 1970?
Okay, well, first of all, I had a little problem with the word pioneer. That pioneer is supposed to be someone who does something for the first time. So prior to 1970, the pioneers would be the guys, Randolph Rust, and those guys prior to 1970. In 1970, well, in a way, the company 𝐼𝐭𝐞 was a pioneer in that the company was a pioneer in that they were willing to go offshore the East Coast when you had established companies like Shell, BP, and Texaco, who shied away. They did not accept 𝐼𝐭𝐞's invitation to jointly explore the area. They were much less optimistic about the productivity or the probability of finding oil and gas. So 𝐼𝐭𝐞 as a company, I think, is a pioneer. There are a lot of, for example, in the local industry, we had, when the government took over, started to get involved into the oil industry, because the government was just regulators. But in 1974, they took over Shell, and then they took over in 83, BP and so on. The pioneers, they would, you know, I think the guys like those first local managers, like Leonard Lewis, and you had like
Ken Birchwood.
Ken Birchwood, yeah, that's the name.
Walter James.
Walter James, yes. Those are pioneering guys because they, you know, they were the first to get into the hot seat of oil management, the first after the colonials.
I've seen Miguel hand up. Miguel, do you have a question for Mr. Mends?
Yeah, Mr. Mends, I just want to say thank you for the timeless advice that you gave during the session. I heard Dr. Alexander mention that you've been in the industry for 50 years, right? That's a really long time. And one of the things I share with you is, you know, my passion for service the country. Trinidad and Tobago has no doubt made a lot of good calls, and we had a lot of success in this industry. But it's really a two-part question. Knowing what you know now, do you think that we should have done anything differently? And is there anything that we should be doing differently as it concerns the industry in the future?
Okay, one of the things that struck me in the industry, for example, was the takeover of the Texaco refinery, and also the takeover of Trinidad and Tobago. I feel that we lack the confidence to actually be owners of those under some sort of conditions. I couldn't see, for example, my reasoning with regard to the Texaco refinery was that Texaco couldn't take the refinery, remove it, and take it to some other place to operate. So I felt the government would have been in a very good position to bargain, you know, with the company. Similarly, I think I agree with some people on the BP takeover, the old BP. I think Trinidad had the skills. I don't think we needed a foreign company to help with the management. Now, it's very easy to look back, you know, in hindsight and say, oh, we should have done. I think what we did right, for example, is the gas industry, where you had stranded reserves or like resources, and the government took the initiative of getting into the petrochemical industry. One of the questions I had, you know, was the amount of LNG that they've been exporting. In that, you have to make a choice with the amount of chemical plants on the ground. You needed to have a certain amount of gas in reserve. Now we were lucky, or we were fortunate. In the initial stages, we had all this gas that we were able to, as I say, monetize. But I don't know if we paid enough attention to future operations. Should we have kept a little more gas back in reserves rather than going to new plants? And that is a ticklish situation. I mean, on the one hand, one was concerned about leaving gas in the ground, that some other fuel would come up and you would not be able to commercialize it. On the other hand, you're worried about running out reserves. It's a very ticklish situation. One has to deal with the facts as they are on the ground. And this shows, I think the gas industry is one industry that really exposes the futility of planning. You can only plan up to a certain extent, but there are many factors that are not in your control. And one has to work with the circumstances as one sees it, hazard a guess as to what will happen. I don't know, maybe I'm a bit too conservative as far as gas production is concerned, but I felt we could have managed it a bit more. But people would say, well, you know, you can't make money with keeping gas in the ground. So, as I said, it's a game that you have to weigh the circumstances, try to see as much in the future as you could. And we can't see very far in the future. Look at what's happening with oil prices now, gas prices. Who could have foretold that a year ago?
Anybody else have any question for Mr. Mends?
Hi, good evening. So my question is, what is one of the toughest decisions or moments that you were faced with during the industry?
Okay, first of all, let me say that the tough decisions that had to be made with, in the ministry, it was not like decisions on a personal basis. There were decisions in policy, for example, the taxing, how much you should tax the oil company, the introduction of supplemental petroleum tax, for example. I was one of the people who felt that the supplemental petroleum tax came in at a time when there was an inordinate increase in oil prices. The government rightly felt that the companies didn't do anything really extra to earn that revenue, so that the government should tax them more. But I felt that after with the falling oil prices, the SPT should have been drastically decreased or even removed. But there have been decisions and they had to make together with others in negotiations. But I would say tough. I don't think I have any tough decisions as such. I remember, this is not a tough decision, but I remember a tough situation that I faced in 1979. I was just about to have dinner when I got a phone call that two of the largest oil tankers in the world collided off the north coast of Tobago. I was just about to have my appetite just cut immediately, because together, Hugh Hines, the late Hugh Hines, he was controller, National Oil Spill Controller, and I was the deputy controller. So we had to arrange for clean up and the removal of the vessels and so on. Fortunately, there was an oil spill in Trinidad a couple of years before, and this oil spill contingency plan was developed so that we had contacts and so on, and it was not difficult to manage the spill. In fact, very little oil came ashore to Trinidad and Tobago, thanks to the oil currents. But there were a lot of booms and a lot of activity taking place. That was not a difficult decision, but it was a difficult situation that I faced.
Right. One more question. Any closing question?
Dr. Alexander, this is Susan here, Jamat. I have one last question.
Sure.
Mr. Mends, thank you for sharing your time with us. And I just wanted to ask you, I mean, you've got so much experience based here in Trinidad and Tobago. What would be your thoughts moving forward now as we look to countries like Guyana and Suriname? What sort of advice would you give to them? I know they're more into oil. You spoke about gas from our end, but you know, what would you say, I guess, to their governments, you know, now as they're beginning their journey into production?
I think Guyana has the potential of being one of the largest oil producers. The same issue about the role of solar energy when another non-fossil fuels taking place, they would have to face. I think one of the questions they'd have to look at is whether they should invest in infrastructure and land, or just keep their operations marine. They'll have to do a lot of education of their personnel. But as I said before, they have to be cautious. No one knows how long the industry is going to last. Some people say, well, make hay while the sun shines. But that sunshine is what's going to probably curtail oil production. So that my advice to them would be, proceed with caution. Keep an eye on what's taking place, and I'd hate to say go brave, because the size of the investment involved, could be affected or could affect what they're capable of doing. And this is a question, I think, that not only places like Ghana and Suriname face, but even established oil companies are now facing this question as to how they should proceed in the oil industry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mends, for your answers. I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time off to be with us today to share from your experiences. We heard a lot about the history of the oil and gas industry from you, and we really got some good perspectives for the younger ones who listen to you today. So we thank you for that. We do hope to give you a token as soon as things settle down a little bit with COVID. We would like to show our appreciation to you and from the SPE, both student chapters and the SPE TT board. And we hope that you will be able to contact you and you'll be able to contribute with us on more occasions. So with that, I'd like to wish everyone a good afternoon, and thank you very much again, Mr. Mends, and the co-host for running this first series. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just like to leave one last thought. We have a very good history of the oil industry. And we do, written up to the 70s, late 70s, and I think there's a gap between the 70s and the present.
Right.
I think some effort has been made to write the history, but the SPE can follow up on what's been happening in that area, bring the industry history up to date.
That's a really good one. Thank you very much. And the university should actually look into that also by continuing to hear from you all who have the industry experience and get something like that going. So again, thank you very much, Mr. Mends, and good afternoon.
Thank you for having me. Right there.
Take care.